What's up, YouTube? In this video, we're going to be breaking down the 5 simple steps to investing for generational wealth for your kids. This is going to be a really important video if you're a parent and one of your main goals financially and in life is to either build that generational wealth that you can pass down to your children so they can either get a better head start in life, have more opportunities than you did, or maybe help them with a specific goal like getting them through college or helping them be set up for retirement or any combination of those things. So we're going to break this video down into 5 simple steps any parent can follow. This is going to be helpful if you've never done this before or if you've already been doing this for years. Maybe there's some blind spots you weren't aware of. So very excited to hop into the video. Before we do that, quick intro if you don't know who I am. My name is Jose Hernandez. I have an online financial education company that helps first generation wealth builders, people like me and you, people the first person in their family to start investing or start thinking about investing. And my mission is to help you learn how to invest for your goal of financial freedom, or in this case, generational wealth for your family. I got my start in the financial industry as a wealth management advisor, where I earned my Series 7 and 66 licenses, working with wealthy individuals mentored by some of the top financial advisors in the industry. Did that for several years before transitioning into my own thing, where I have been able to help thousands of first-gen wealth builders across the world master investing so they can reach their goals. So that's the intro. Let's get into the actual video itself. Again, we're going to be covering the 5 steps to investing for that generational wealth that you want and deserve for your family. So step 1 is get clear on the goal. And this is something that I cannot stress enough. Like with your own investing and your own financial planning, it's very important to begin with the end in mind. In other words, what is the money going to be used for? And this is a very simple thing, but so many people skip this step, and skipping this step can cause a lot of headaches down the road, as we'll talk about later in this video. We want to make sure that we figure this out from the onset, because this is going to make things much simpler down the road. So what are some examples of goals or purposes for the money? There's all sorts, but here are some of the most common ones that I see in working with clients and students. One of the biggest ones being education. Maybe you want to make sure that your child doesn't get drowned in student loan debt. You want them to get a quality education, and that can be college, it could be private K through 12, it can be other forms of education as well. Maybe college isn't in the books for them, but they want to pursue some other form of education. There's tons of options that you have on the table, but education, bar none, being one of the most common things that I see a lot of parents want to build that wealth for. Early head start. Maybe you're like me and you didn't have a ton of money or resources when you got into the real world as an adult, and you had to struggle a lot, and you don't want your kids to go through that. Maybe you want to give them a solid cushion that they could use to maybe buy their first home or start their own business or whatever it might be. This is another common thing, another common goal that you can aim for when investing for your children. Another one being passing down wealth. Maybe you're trying to build a legacy. Maybe you're trying to build enough wealth for your own so you can reach your own goals. And when you're no longer here, maybe pass that down to the next generation. And this is huge for people that are the first person in their family to start investing, because you're starting a new cycle of how wealth is created and money is talked about in your family, and of course used for generations to come. So that's a big one. Retirement. So there are investment accounts for children that allow you to help them start funding their future retirement. For example, a custodial Roth IRA being an example of that. And there's again, all sorts of things you can do with the money that you're trying to build for your children. But the most important point number 1 is to be ultra clear with what the purpose or the goal of the money is, because that's going to help us with step number 2, which is choosing the right investment accounts. And this is, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that I see parents make when it comes to investing for their kids is, number 1, not realizing what options they have, and secondly, choosing the wrong option, because this can cause some headaches down the road. So there's all sorts of accounts, excuse me, that you can use to invest for your kids, and I have a separate video that goes over this in a lot more detail, but here are some of the more common examples. The 529 plan being a very popular one for education, primarily college, but it can also in a lot of states be used for private K through 12. The custodial IRA, including the custodial Roth IRA to help them set up for retirement. The other custodial accounts, the UGMAs and UTMAs, also being very popular. So there's all sorts of accounts that you can choose from, but the pro tip I want to leave you with here, and this is how you get this right, is you want to make sure that the accounts that you open and fund for your kids match the goals that we outlined in step 1, and also your personal tax picture, because these different types of accounts have different rules and pros and cons when it comes to taxes. But the main thing is to make sure that the accounts that you're opening and funding for your kids match the goal that you outlined in step 1. So here's a quick example of that. Let's say your goal is simple. You want to help them with education. Maybe it's college, maybe it's private K through 12, but in any case, you want to get that burden off of their shoulders and help them get a quality education that can help them later on in life. One common investment account type for this would be the state 529 plan. Now, it's not the only type of account that you can use for this particular goal, but 529s have a lot of tax incentives for you to fund them. They can, in some states, provide you with a tax break. And of course, the money in these accounts can be invested, can grow without being taxed, and if used for qualified educational expenses, all that money can come out tax-free. So there's a lot of pros to this type of account, again, if you're specifically using the money for education. A 529 would probably not make sense if your goal isn't education, because if you use the money for anything other than qualified educational expenses, there can be taxes and penalties that apply on the money that you withdraw and use it for something else. So again, this goes back to understanding why it's important to understand step number 1 and carefully measure your options in step number 2. So step number 3, once we're clear on the goal and once we're clear on the type of account that we want to use and we've opened that account, step number 3 is then to choose the right investments. And I see a lot of parents get hung up on this point. So let's go over this in some detail together. It's very similar to your own investing. So this is something I teach all my clients and students. There's really 3 main things you want to think about and consider when you're setting up an investment strategy, whether it's for yourself or your children. The same principles apply. And we want to really be in the middle of this Venn diagram here. So I'll break this down simply, quickly, in plain English. So there's 3 things you want to consider. The first one is what I call your investor profile. In other words, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on growth? Are you focusing on protection? Are you focusing on income, right? All those things depend on how much wealth you have and all sorts of things you're trying to accomplish. But the simplest way of putting it is, are you focusing on growth or protection? So if you're building the wealth from scratch, you're probably focusing on growth. If you already have enough wealth and you're now trying to preserve it and use it, maybe you're focusing on protection. So that's an example of that. Time horizon, which is a fancy way of saying how much time do you have between now and the goal. So how much time do you have between now and when you actually expect to need the money? So if you're investing for a newborn and you think they'll need the money for at 18, you have 18 years to work with. And then, of course, your risk tolerance. So how comfortable are you with the ups and downs in the market? So when we take these 3 variables into account, this helps us put together what's called a suitable investment strategy for your kids. But again, this is something that you should be mirroring in your own investments as well. So what is an example of this? So you don't have to overcomplicate this. Similar to your own investing, you can put together a solid portfolio for your kids or your children using either index funds or ETFs. This is an example. I'm not saying this is the exact same portfolio that you need to follow, but this is an example of an aggressive ETF portfolio. You'll see it's 91% stocks, 9% bonds, primarily invested in low-cost ETFs, primarily Vanguard funds. So you can put together a very solid, what's called asset allocation, basically investment mix that matches those 3 things that we looked at: your investor profile, your time horizon, and your comfort with risk. And again, you can use index funds or ETFs to put this together. But before we even get to this point, we need to, again, understand what is the goal, what is the proper type of account to use, and then what's the proper investment strategy. Because once you know those things, this step is very simple. Moving on to step number 4. So once we're clear on what is the goal, once we're clear on what is the accounts that I should be using for these different goals, and once we're clear on what investment selection, what investment strategy makes sense, we're then having to fund the account, right? Because we need to put the money to work. We actually need to build the wealth in these types of accounts. And a pro tip, just like your own investments, you'll see there's a lot of similarities between investing for your kids and also investing for yourself. A huge pro tip that's going to help along the process is to automate the process. Basically, treat the investments almost like a subscription. Put your investing on auto pay, not just for yourself, but for your kids as well. And this is super important if you are building that wealth from scratch, if you're starting from zero for them. This is by far the best and most impactful way to speed up that wealth creation process. So simple, quick example here. Let's say that you have net of taxes monthly $7,000 from your paycheck. You can set it up to where, for example, you can do more than this, you can do less than this. I'm just going with simple numbers here. For example, let's say that of that $7,000, you decide to have 700 of it automatically transferred to the investment accounts you have set up for your kids. Maybe you have a UGMA or a UTMA, or maybe you have like a 529, right? We cover that in step 2. But in any case, in this case, we're automatically transferring $700 of that $7,000 after tax we have to work with to our kids' investment accounts. And then, of course, that money is going to be automatically invested. So as you should know by now, it's not enough to just transfer the money to the investment accounts. We want to make sure that money gets invested. And if you're doing this properly, you can have it set up to where anytime that money hits the account, that money is being put to work. It's being used to buy the index funds or ETFs that you got clear on in the prior step. but this is what it looks like, right? So quick, simple example. And if you're wondering, okay, like what can this grow to? So let's say that you have a newborn, they're 0 years old, and you're following the previous example, doing the $700. Again, you could do more than that, you could do less than that. I don't know your situation. We're just going with very simple numbers here. Let's say that we start off from 0 and we do that consistently until the child is 18. And we just get an average rate of return of around 10% in the market, which is what the S&P 500 has done over the past century. If we look back about 100 years, over this time period, you're able to build for your kid by the time they're 18 over $383,000, which I don't know about you, I could have definitely used that money when I was 18 to help me out when I got started in my life as an adult. So really simple numbers, really basic example here, but I really wanted to show you the power of, even if you're starting off small, even if you're starting from scratch, the power of having a good strategy in place, and of course the power of being consistent. So step number 5, and this is another one I see so many parents overlook, is planning the transfer of the money. So you're spending all this time, all this energy, all these years building the wealth. You want to make sure that it's properly transferred to the child the right way. So what does this look like? So for example, let's say that you are thinking about, I want to make sure my child has a solid head start once they're an adult. I don't want them to touch the money or have access to the money while they're still a minor. I want to control it while they're still young. But my goal is to have them get a head start of $250,000 once they're 21. That's a perfect scenario for something like a UTMA or UGMA, a custodial account. So in this example, we've built the $250,000 of wealth in the UTMA, and then once they're 21, by law, these types of accounts must be transferred to them. So you would facilitate the process of transferring the account to their control, and hopefully over this time period, you've coached them up, you've educated them, and they know how to make savvy decisions with that money. They can continue to invest it, they can use it for real estate, they can use it to buy a home, right? That's up to them, but hopefully you've done your part in not just building the wealth, but also coaching them up and educating them along the way. So to wrap things up here, 5 simple steps to building the generational wealth for your kids. Step 1, let's get clear on the goal. Let's make sure that we understand what the money is going to actually be used for. Step 2, let's choose the right investment accounts that match the goal that we've outlined. Step 3, let's choose an investment strategy that makes sense given the time frame, given our comfort with risk, and given what we're trying to focus on. Step 4, let's start funding the accounts, again, on autopilot if you can, which is the best way to start growing the wealth for your kids if you're starting from scratch. And step 5, let's make sure that we take some time to understand how, when, why will the child receive the money, and also what can the money be used for. There are more complex things you can do with estate planning if you want to set up a trust for them. That's not always necessary, but in some situations, if there's enough money at play and you're very specific about how, when, who the money can be used by or accessed by, that's where the more advanced estate planning can come into play. But in any case, following these 5 steps is going to set your kids up for massive success financially in the future, and also give you lots of peace of mind knowing that you are doing your part to make sure that the generations after you are in a better situation than maybe the one that you're in, the ones previous to you. So if you're watching this video and you are a parent, maybe you have a newborn, maybe you have kids, or maybe you have kids that are a little bit older, and one of your main goals in life and financially is to build that generational wealth for them. You want to provide them with a great head start financially in life, maybe the one that you didn't, or maybe you just want to pass down wealth to their kids and have that generational wealth legacy continue to roll on for generations to come. But you need help. You're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to start, or I've been doing this for some time now. I don't know if I'm on track. I need some help. I need some guidance. Next steps are simple. In the description to this video, you're going to see a link that you can use to schedule a one-on-one conversation with myself. I'm also going to leave that in the comments too, which is, I find, sometimes easier to find. But in that conversation, we can sit down. It's an opportunity for us to speak, help me understand more about your situation, your goals, and see how I can point you in the right direction. So again, the link to schedule that one-on-one with me is going to be in the description to the video and also in the comments. But that's going to be all for me in this video. I hope you found this helpful. If you did find this video helpful, make sure you give it a like, drop a comment down below if you found it helpful as well. Feel free to share it with a friend too that you think might find this helpful, and also subscribe to the channel. That way you can get more videos from me just like this. But again, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.